Tommy Kahnle signs a one-year deal with Detroit. Let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, January 31st, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you all had a fantastic week. We have a lot to go over, same thing, not at all. So obviously no episode on Wednesday, just had a lot going on, but we are back and better than ever. And it's actually funny, I would have had to record that episode on Tuesday when there was no news, and then all the news in the world happened on Wednesday. It was like, like a gas stove, where you turn it and you got to wait for it to click, and you hear it click, it goes, and then eventually it ignites, right? That's kind of what Wednesday was. It wasn't a hot stove. The whole thing wasn't blazing. We didn't get Bregman and Alonso within, 5 minutes of each other or anything, but there was a little bit of action in a month that has seen no action, consistently, at least in this January part of the offseason. So we take that, and we're going to talk about some of the other moves. There were some Tigers targets, some alliteration there, that are now off the board that were signed by other teams. But the Tigers did also sign a player on Wednesday. They agreed to a one-year, $7.5 million deal with Tommy Kahnle, who is a righty reliever. We're going to talk about every single angle of this, how he fits into the bullpen, what his role may be. Is it a smart move, bad move? What does the rest of the offseason look like? All of that stuff. But just initial knee-jerk reaction was just this is exactly what we've been asking for. And let's get into why. Let's just jump right into it. So 1 year, $7.5 million, like I said, it was straight up. There's no, club option. There's no player option. He doesn't have to opt in or opt out or anything. Just 1 year, $7.5 million. There you go. That's it. He is a 35-year-old right-handed reliever. The reason why I think this is such a good move and that I support it is because this is finally bringing in a swing and miss type reliever in the back end of your bullpen, which if you have watched this show in any capacity over the last calendar year, if you just joined like this offseason, welcome. Thank you for coming along on the ride here. But if you have watched this show in any way, shape, or form over the last calendar year, you are well aware that we have been asking for a consistent swing and miss reliever to add to this bullpen for that entire time period. Now, we thought Alex Lang might be it at one point in time, but obviously inconsistency on the mound and then just straight up an injury and not pitching for the entire second half of the year. But remember, he was demoted before the injury, demoted because of play before he got hurt. And they did the pitching chaos thing, and it worked great. But the thing they consistently missed out on and desperately needed was somebody in the ninth inning of a one-run game with somebody on base that they could go, you know what? Jason Foley's awesome, and we love him to pieces, but we know that when Foley's on the mound, this ball is getting put in play. And that might be fine because it's probably going to be a ground ball as well, but it also might not be fine. It might be a ground ball that squeaks up the middle or in between the third base and shortstop gap, right? They desperately needed a true strikeout artist, and that is what Tommy Kahnle is. So I love this deal, knee-jerk. Now, there's a lot of nuance that goes in with this. There's a lot of good that I think comes with this, and there's also some hesitation and some concerns as well. He is, if we're going to start with the good news, he's a 2.44 ERA over the last 3 seasons combined, and all 3 of those he did record a sub-3 ERA. Sounds pretty good because it is pretty good. He had a strikeout per 9 right around 10 over the last 3 years combined. Beautiful. Okay, that's very, very solid strikeout right there. You're talking about like 27-ish, 28% over the last 3 years combined. That's really solid. If you look at his arsenal, it's really fascinating to me. So when he was younger, he was a little bit more of a flamethrower, and he actually talked about this, which I thought was really cool in his introductory media availability. He was a little bit more of a flamethrower, could touch 97, plus with his fastball. And so he used his fastball a lot because it was a really, really, really good pitch. Now he is not exclusively changeup, but like 3 out of every 4 are a changeup. And he had a stretch in the postseason where he threw 61 consecutive changeups. And like obviously it was working, or else he would have stopped way sooner. So like just fascinating there that he is now so changeup heavy, and there's a good reason for that. His changeup is elite, and it is genuinely one of the better changeups in the entire game of baseball, which is unbelievably exciting. He throws it about 73% of the time, at least he did in 2024. Threw about 20% four-seam fastballs. That fastball, while not as fast as it was in his heyday, is still a 94 to 95 mile an hour pitch. We'll still talk about that a little bit later too. The changeup, 157 batting average against and a 39% whiff rate in 2024. Those are both incredible numbers. If you're looking at like run value of a pitch, it also is one of the more valuable changeups in that metric in the American League last year. Overall, not just his changeup, but his whole arsenal, he had a 36% whiff rate on the season. That was one of the highest in baseball. A 25.5, just over 25.7% K rate was well above league average. That's not quite like the elites that we see out there of like the true, top strikeout artists in baseball for how many swings and misses he gets. But it is far above league average and is still a really, really good number. Also, something that I guess I didn't really realize, I always knew he was a big strikeout guy, didn't realize that his ground ball numbers are phenomenal. One of the highest ground ball rates amongst relievers in baseball over the last 3 years, and last year specifically was very, very high up there as well. So a lot of swing and miss, and when the ball is put in play, it's on the ground. Beautiful. That's what we want. I think this is a perfect fit in this bullpen. And seeing what other high leverage relievers are getting on the free agent market. We'll talk about some later, but like you're seeing a lot of 10 to even up to like $15 million AAV for these high leverage relievers. I think that Kahnle's a great option for a team that we can assume, and I even say assume like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I think we can say with some confidence that this team is not going to break the bank on anyone. Like they have their set prices of what they think players are worth, and they're not going to overpay someone just to overpay them and to guarantee that they're on the roster. So all of those things considered, I think 1 year, $7.5 million is fantastic for Tommy Kahnle. Now let's talk about why we did get him for cheaper. He gets a lot of strikeouts, right? I just listed all of his stats. They're phenomenal. Why did we get this 35-year-old for only $7.5 million? Well, we'll talk about that and talk about the risk that comes with a deal like this right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I recently used Game Time Picks to get tickets for an upcoming NBA game. I'm all about the Pistons this year. Tough loss to the Pacers a couple of nights ago, but browsing through the app was very simple, and I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal was especially impressive, offering the best value for the event. The app's features like seat views before you buy and all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout made it the experience of a lifetime. It was smooth and reliable. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery is a great feature, and it comes with the lowest price guarantee, giving me some peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Monday recapping anything that happens over the weekend. Hopefully, these free agent dominoes continue to fall, then we have a better idea of what this roster is going to look like. Really just waiting on like the Alex Bregman domino at this point. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So we talked about all the positives with Tommy Kahnle. I really cannot stress enough how okay I am with this deal, how much I support it. Like this is a good move that I agree with, and I think is a great add to this bullpen. That being said, the reason why he was cheaper than a lot of other relievers on the market is because he's 35 years old and has been injured at some point in pretty much each of the last, 5 years? Like legitimately. The last time he truly had like a full season, quote unquote, because with one inning relievers, it's hard to kind of draw the line in the sand of what's a full season and what's not, right? But by, like modern standards, if you're looking for the last like true full season that he had, I think it's fair to say it was 2019. We're talking like pre-COVID. That's 6 years ago now, believe it or not. So I think that that's a very fair thing to bring up. I know Evan Petzel talked about that plenty. I think it's a very fair concern. And when you look at the types of injuries that have sidelined him, they are all arm related. Okay, this is according to Fox Sports. Okay, so this is just a list of all of the injuries he has had since 2020. Okay. Shoulder, bicep, forearm, elbow. It's not great, right? That is obviously kind of a red flag, and that is very much why he went for far under market value for a pitcher that has his ERA and his strikeout numbers over the last 3 seasons. The last 2 years, he's thrown about 40 innings, so he's missed about the same amount of time. That's like 1 60-day IL stint about in each of the last 2 seasons. And then the year before that, I count it. In earlier when I was talking about the last 3 seasons combined, right, had a sub-3 ERA. It was like 12 innings. So like, I think it's fair for people to bring up the injury concern. I also think it's fair, you look at the trajectory. He's 35 coming off of these arm injuries. And while his strikeout numbers were still good in 2024, they did go down a decent amount this past season when comparing to what he did in 2022, again, very small sample, or 2023, which was another, like I said, 40 inning-ish sample. And on top of the strikeout rate dipping, 3 or 4%, the average fastball velocity went down about a mile an hour from where it was. It's still almost 95, not a slow pitch, still a really effective pitch. And he only throws it 20% of the time. But I think also still fair to point out, at the end of the day, again, this is a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. And the upside is you bring in a guy that can put up a sub-3 ERA and be a truly elite, like by every definition of the word, like one of the best swing and miss artists in baseball, if he stays healthy and plays consistently. I love the deal. I think it's a really smart deal by the front office, but I'm also not going to pretend like there isn't some inherent risk there, and it's completely just like foolproof. And yeah, like point out why he wasn't the cheaper option from the other ones that were available. But again, I love the deal, and I think the upside is tremendous for next to no risk. 1 year, $7.5 million. I've said it 8 times now. So let's talk about what the bullpen now looks like. We talked about the need for a swing and miss guy because they need to be able to put him in the back end of the bullpen, a guy that can take the mound in those high leverage situations. I really like how Kahnle talked about that in his introductory media availability that he had. It was just, a Zoom call with the beat reporters, but talked about how he's been a back-end reliever for most of his career, especially the last 4 or 5 years. He anticipates that to be the same. He said that AJ and the front office have talked to him about pitching late in games already, but also mentioned that he will pitch whenever he is called upon, and really the situation doesn't matter in terms of how ready he is for an outing, which is obviously all stuff you want to hear and all great and fine and dandy. This dude's this guy is a 10-year veteran. So I'm sure he knows what he's doing. It's nice to hear because AJ Hinch is our manager, and so we have pitching chaos always looming. There is always a chance that the high leverage reliever can go out in the 6th inning if AJ thinks it's truly the highest leverage situation going forward. So I think that's good. When looking at the names in the pen, you have Tommy Kahnle, Foley, Holton, Brisky, Vest, and then a few other spots that are open and going to be competed for in spring training. And there's a handful of names that could be, right? We talk Sawyer Gibson-Long all the time. I think they want to try him out as more of a starter, but coming off of Tommy John, we'll see. Sean Gunther was phenomenal last year. Brennan Hanafy was phenomenal this past year. Brant Herter was great this past year. Obviously, the question of what to do with Jackson Jobe. Obviously, the team wants him to be a starter long-term, but he came out of the bullpen last year. Alex Lang's going to be healthy. Imagine a world in which this team has a healthy Tommy Kahnle and Alex Lang isn't walking 20% of batters and is healthy. Then you're talking about 2 elite swing and miss guys. But obviously with Lang, that's a massive if. Ty Madden could work his way into kind of a longer relief role. Tyler Madison, we'll see what he has. Cater Montero's probably not going to have a rotation spot, so he could be in play for a bullpen position. Tyler Owens was added to the 40-man roster to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. I know a lot of people that like him. You have pitching depth, which is why Alex Faedo was the man that was DFA'd. I just to put a bow on Kahnle, I really like this addition. I'm really excited, and I think it's exactly what we have been asking for on here. It's a true swing and miss guy in the back end. If he stays healthy, it's a slam dunk. That's just kind of a big if. And for the minimal risk that it is, okay, he gets hurt, blows his arm out, and doesn't pitch barely. Okay, well, the Tigers figured out how to have a pretty good bullpen last year over the course of the full season without a dominant swing and miss guy. I'm sure they'll be able to figure it out again with the same manager and the same names back there. So I really do think it's a high ceiling, high floor type of move. Unfortunately, there has to be a corresponding move to make room for Kahnle, and that is Alex Faedo. This makes sense to me. He wouldn't have been my first option. I don't think he would have been my second option. He might not have even been my third option to DFA to make room for him. But I also understand it, and I'm not really mad about it either. They tried to make Faedo that swing and miss guy out of the pen, but he's just been far too inconsistent and really, honestly, hasn't found a true role in a major league bullpen, just a major league pitching staff in general. We're still not really sure where he ideally and at his best slides in to a pitching staff at the major league level, at least for this organization. He had a solid 2024, and I'm he still had a sub-4 ERA this past year. It wasn't like he had a terrible season, and did have a little bit of swing and miss in there. And I'm sure if he makes it through the DFA process and the Tigers don't cut bait with him and he's okay staying in the organization, which I think is probably a decently big if, I'd imagine somebody out there would be willing to add him to their major league roster, but we'll see what happens. If he does make it through all of that, then I would imagine the Tigers would love to keep him in AAA just as a pitching depth choice. But again, I have no issue with this. I think there's still a viewpoint out there when looking at Faedo that some of the fan base has where it's still This is a former first rounder that hasn't really gotten a true opportunity and hasn't been healthy fully yet. And if he can just develop into something still, like maybe he could turn a corner and finally blossom into, I don't think ever like first round starter talent, but like a really good reliever or whatever. Like maybe we'll see what happens going forward, but like he's 29 and turns 30 in this fall, like this calendar year. Like I think at this point we're probably like that wasn't bad, right? Again, 3.65 ERA, 3.64, like sub 4 ERA. I'm not saying that as like a derogatory thing that he's just like, oh, he's never going to get better, whatever. Solid couple of years. But I think he's probably near or at his ceiling right now at 29, almost 30 years old. Low leverage, multi-inning reliever, not going to be your high leverage 1 inning guy, but also not going to be your starting pitcher. And I think that it's also a huge testament to not even really like it being Faedo's fault, quote unquote, that he's the odd man out here. I think it's just a testament to the pitching depth the team has. I just listed off a ton of names of guys that had like sub 3 ERAs and, people didn't even know they existed a calendar year ago. So just given all of those circumstances, we talked about Faedo being a possibility to get DFA'd throughout the offseason back in like November, just because of those reasons. And they finally found a reliever that they think justifies doing that. So we'll see what happens with him. We'll see if he stays in the organization or leaves. Let's talk about all of the other drama that has happened around baseball and obviously involving the Tigers offseason here over the last few days. We will do that right after this. Got to talk to you all today about our friends over at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to final whistle. The live betting feature allows you to stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sports partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, everybody, welcome back here to third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shots to every dayers that do tune in every day. Let's talk about everything else surrounding. We obviously have broken down the Tommy Kahnle edition. Big fan. I think this bullpen could be really, really good again, and it should be really exciting. I think there's a lot of things that AJ is going to be really excited about to utilize out of the pen this year. It was a very dramatic week overall, though, and there was a lot of other moves flying around. Like I mentioned, got to make sure that none of these are – that's just anytime I get a Twitter notification, I'm like, oh, is it, Passan or Heyman or whatever? So in the media availability that Scott Harris had after signing Tommy Kahnle, he had said that the Tigers are not done, which I think holds next to no weight at all. Like that could mean literally anything. They could sign somebody to a minor league deal and he could be a AA righty reliever with a 4 ERA and like, oh, see, we weren't done. Like and like he's kind of always been the guy that's like, we're going to every day like try to improve a little bit. And so that just kind of inherently means the same thing. So like I don't take anything out of that. I'm holding my breath on Bregman. We can just talk about that now. This is great. You guys are going to love this, okay? Everyone's going to love this. So Bregman, the newest update is now that the Red Sox are falling out of the mix and he might not go there. Like 100 hours ago, the Red Sox were the heavy favorite. Then the Astros were the favorite. Now the Astros are still back to where they were and aren't going to get him. And it was just like a Hail Mary and the Red Sox are slipping. I I just don't care about the headlines anymore involving him until he signs pen to paper with a Major League Baseball team. I do not care anymore. I'm going to keep talking about it on here because it's kind of my job to, but like, just know that I don't like it. Sure, I still have hope. I'm going to hold out hope until, again, he signs a Major League contract somewhere. Some moves that did happen over the last few days. Max Scherzer to the Toronto Blue Jays. 1 year, 15 mil. Somebody online pointed out that Scherzer got 15 mil, and Verlander got 15, or one of them got 15 and a half, and one of them got 15. I think Scherzer got 15 and a half, and Verlander got 15. Both coming off of rougher years, have had some injury concerns, are in their 40s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see what happens with two Tigers greats there. Yeah, Toronto, man. Like, good for the Blue Jays for picking a direction. One of my biggest pet peeves, I know I've talked about this before, is like not pick, and I'm not saying you have to go all in or all out on like full rebuild or World Series every single year. Like, that's ridiculous and is not the case either. But like having an actual direction for your organization and going, look, you know, we have to pay Bichette and Vladdy or trade them. And if we don't trade them, we got to kind of go all in this year because we don't know if, you know, it's not guaranteed that we have this core beyond this upcoming season. So I give them a lot of credit for being in the mix for everybody, right? And whether I make fun of them for being, you know, second place on a lot of guys or not, so be it. But they have landed a few here lately, and you know, good for them. I am pro teams trying to win, as wild as that sounds. This one is actually the next two are going to be Tigers targets. At least at one point in the offseason were Tigers targets. Ha-Sung Kim to the Tampa Bay Rays. 2 years, 29 mil with an opt-out after the first year. I'm going to be honest. If the Tigers don't get Bregman, I will be upset that they did not match this. And I understand the concern with him too. Okay. The bat kind of just came around recently. For the Tigers especially, he's not going to play shortstop, at least immediately. And he's hurt. Like he's going to miss opening day. Like it's a pretty legitimate and serious injury. So I understand the concern from front offices to just like willingly hand over, 30 mil or whatever, 29 mil for a player like that. But man, I like, that's a really good defender that draws a lot of walks and has hit, been a league average-ish hitter this past season and dating back to the last like season and a half. So I think it's such a Tampa Bay Rays move. It just reeks of Tampa Bay Rays. And I respect it. I think it's a pretty good move for them. And I think especially with the opt-out after year one, I mean, heck, I think they're probably sitting pretty nicely and pretty glad that they made a deal like that. But if the Tigers don't make any moves at third base, I'm going to probably look back at that and think, maybe wish the Tigers were a little bit more aggressive on Ha-Sung Kim. Carlos Estevez goes to the Kansas City Royals, which is interesting because it was just announced on Sunday, that the Tigers were interested in Estevez, but they obviously pivoted, went to Kahnle. They weren't going to get Estevez and Kahnle. Also, 20 mil over 2 years with a club option for a third year for Carlos Estevez. So good for him for getting paid. It's interdivision, and he had a really good year last year. So I don't love the fact that, in a close game late, our bullpen's going to go up against a guy of that caliber, but got paid, get some long-term security, is on a team that, made the playoffs this past year. Like, good for him, man. Good for him. Lastly, the trade that's being mocked everywhere. This has nothing to do with the Tigers, but is an AL Central team, is apparently the Cincinnati Reds are trying to work out a trade for Luis Robert Jr. Wowzers. I love it from the Reds' perspective. I really do. Again, I'm pro teams trying to get better and trying to win. And the White Sox are clearly not trying to win. But again, if you don't the White Sox should be in the business of getting as much young talent as possible. And Robert's value is never going to be higher than it is today. And every day you wait, it's going to go down a little bit. So like, and not obviously, marginally, but like, I think it makes sense I think they should have traded him at like the deadline. I think they should have traded him if he was healthy. I don't remember. I think they absolutely should trade him and try to just get an absolute monster haul for him. But we'll see. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shots to every day that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Monday. Sorry about Wednesday. We're back in business halfway through February. We go back to 5 episodes a week. So the first couple of weeks will still be at Monday, Wednesday, Friday. After we get past that, though, we will be back to 5 episodes a week. We'll be at Pitchers and Catchers reporting. And baseball is in the air. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you on Monday, baby. Go Tigers.